Welcome to the Crazy Dre Podcast Show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's your main man, aka Crazy Crockett. Folks, I got to talk about music. Music is something that I've always wanted to be able to perform and do myself. I've never been able to do it. I don't have the eye hand coordination to play the guitar because of my left hand, but it didn't stop me from loving it and enjoying it. And what it has done for me has given me an opportunity to relax and chill out. It's given me a sense of belonging to something that we all can universally uh, enjoy. It doesn't matter if it's R&B or it doesn't matter if it's country. It doesn't matter if it's soft rock or contemporary rock. But you know what? We're going to talk about the Godfather of heavy metal, and he started with Black Sabbath. We got to talk about Ozzy Osbourne. And Ozzy, right here, this is a picture I decided to use for Ozzy Osbourne. I this just really is it illustrates everything about his performance after he left Black Sabbath, or what Black Sabbath kicked him out of the band for his behavior. Thank God for Sharon Osbourne at the time. It wasn't his wife; it was his manager, and then she fell in love with Ozzy, and Ozzy fell in love with Sharon, and they created this awesome character personality that Ozzy just fill in as a Prince of Darkness. And what it did for me was different because I used to listen to guys like Bruce Springsteen, Elvis Presley, John Cougar Mellencamp. I know I got to take that Cougar out of there, but and all those type of artists, ZZ Top, Van Halen, but Ozzy was just different. And I remember when I was 14 years old, and I bought the album, and I was in Georgia. My parents were on vacation. We went on vacation with the rest of the family, and I was looking around the store that we were in, and there it just happens to be a tape deck of Ozzy Osbourne. And I looked at it, and I wanted to show you. I want to show you I want to show you the tape deck. I mean, the actually the record that I have. So lately, I've been buying vinyl, and this is it right here. This is it right here, and this is the Ozzy Osbourne "No More Tears" album. And I know I displaced that a little off and on, too maybe too close for the camera and all that. But I want to make it proof to you that I actually bought Ozzy Osbourne album years after. I just bought it about 2 weeks ago. I know that in the most recent uh, the uh, the last show at at uh, at the Villa Park in Birmingham, England, is when July 5th of 2025 was Ozzy Osbourne's last show. So I had to make sure that I bought an album that I grew up listening to. And I love songs like No More Tears, and my favorite is Road to Nowhere, and of course the My Mom Coming Home, and Time After Time is another favorite of mine. Uh, Everybody knows the song Mr. Crowley. Crazy Train is an awesome song that's also on this album. But this is what it means to me. And I think Ozzy is a good way of explaining that not everyone is supposed to look completely like everyone else. You're not going to try to look like Waylon Jennings or Elvis Presley or James Brown. And his demeanor, his genre, his music, his metal, his voice is very unique. Of course, his image is very unique, but he's just something and someone that I grew up just listening to and just took a different perspective to his music. And I've always didn't really listen to Black Sabbath when I was younger because they were the 1970s band, and I grew up in the late 80s and then in the 1990s. So me listening to Ozzy at a very young age, it was a really it opened doors up for me, not just with Guns N' Roses, but it opened doors up to me to listen to like Metallica and maybe even Slayer and bands like that. Even some of it Megadeth a little bit here and there. But Ozzy was just, he's just someone that you could just relate to in a way that he was just not the cool kid. And here's a story for you. So his dad was really concerned about Ozzy's well-being as growing up, and Ozzy was not really athletic or anything like that, or to my understanding, based on what how he described his dad described Ozzy. And Ozzy's dad bought him a guitar and an amp, and that's how a couple of the guys from Black Sabbath uh, connect with Ozzy because they knew Ozzy from school, and Ozzy was the only one with an amp, so they had to include him in the band. So that's just sometimes being in the right place at the right time, and Ozzy was in the right place at the right time with the other guys on Black Sabbath, and just having the right equipment or having the right tool or instrument around certain guys and get you a show. And I think that what we can take away from Ozzy is that you can make mistakes, and Ozzy's always made mistakes with drugs and alcohol and 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 infidelity and whatever he did. And I mean, there's so many stories of him biting a bat at a record deal with Columbia, I think, and he was just super nervous, and he bit the two heads of the dove, and the executives from Columbia didn't appreciate it, and then they kicked him out, and he was never allowed to be back in that building. So I mean, everyone has their story. Everyone has their thing, and it's just like one of my other favorite songs from Ozzy is a Dreamer, and a Dreamer is about looking into the future and looking into the past, and making kind of a a reserved objective of what your life is about or what Ozzy's life was about in that song. And I just think that people, unfortunately, I think the biggest problem with music today is that, in my point of view, is that there's not a lot of people writing songs, joining bands in a garage. Someone's got the guitar, someone's got the drums, someone's got the bass, someone's got the lead guitar, and everyone comes in together and writes songs, and then they progressively get better or worse or break up and then get started with a new band and the new mates and new stuff. And Ozzy is probably the first of anyone in my generation besides Kurt Cobain that I actually really like. Oh wow, Kurt Cobain died. I mean, that's pretty. I mean, when he died in 1994, he was probably one of the first and only artists in my generation that I like. Wow, that's really awful. Now, yeah, we can talk about Lane Stanley from Alice in Chains, and we can talk about uh, us, uh, even guys from Stone Temple Pilot, and and a couple other guys. I mean, but it didn't register to me the way that Ozzy Osbourne registered to me. And he's not dead yet, but he's fighting Parkinson's. And it's very sad in a way that that this guy used to run around on the stage and clap, and this guy used to throw water and stuff at the crowd, and it just sometimes if you look at it and you were like 8 years old or 10 years old or 14, you see a guy who's shirtless running around, a middle-aged man at that point in the 80s and 90s, and you think it's ridiculous. But that's what made that show, and that's what made his presence so much more fun and so much more enjoyable. And even with him getting older, it was kind of like it was a really cool thing to see him do interviews and see him interacting with the fans. And you know you can say whatever you want to say about Ozzy, but Ozzy is just one of those guys that he didn't really not have a good song. I mean, his songs were pretty good. I mean, it was radio friendly, most of them, and some of them were just you kind of like oof, like Mr. Tinker Train or No More Tears. I mean, they kind of a dark theme to it than in that perspective. But I mean, that's what metal was. Metal was, that daring and edgy, and I think Ozzy had a really good way of writing his story. Like "Mama, I'm Coming Home" was about him and his wife kind of in a ruckus of they're fighting with each other constantly. So he wrote that song near Linda Ford when they did that song together in the 80s. I forget the song that I'm talking of because I'm just popping this in my head as I'm talking. But but Ozzy, it's it's an era that's it's so strange that the guy that kind of started the era of this gothic metal music is ending. And I think a lot of these artists like Guns N' Roses and Metallica, I know Metallica and Guns N' Roses are a little different from each other, and Slayer is different than Guns N' Roses. Slayer's more like Metallica, and Megadeth is more like Metallica and Slayer. But I mean, you can be the judge of that too. All those people out there that actually listen to that type of music. But I just that era is ending, and it's almost like when the '50s was ending. You had uh, Elvis Presley's passing. You had James Brown pass away years after. You had Buddy Holly obviously died in the '50s, uh, and all these other artists. Diana Ross still alive, but I mean Smokey Robinson's still alive, but that music isn't really relevant anymore. And someday, metal might not be relevant anymore. I mean, you just when you hear music on the radio, it even if it's hard rock or somewhat metal, there's something that is missing in that music. And I think it's the edge of being daring and being prerogative or saying things and making the drums or the beat and the guitar loud and obnoxious, and telling stories about love and passion and lust. I mean, that's all over. And with Ozzy, it was about being dark. Mr. Crowley was one of my favorite songs about a guy who was basically a devil worshiper. And, he was just a very dark, dark man. And it's probably one of his best songs. And it was probably one of the best dark songs that you can ever imagine. It was a radio played song. And Randy Rhoads, God bless his soul, when he died in 1983, I think, in an airplane crash, he was playing with Ozzy at the time, but Randy Rhoads, here's a fun fact, was in Quiet Riot. So, so I mean, but that guitar, I mean, those two guitar solos, by far were like the best guitar solos of all time. Maybe you can put in Eddie Van Halen or Van Morrison for one of their songs, or Jimi Hendrix does uh, the anthem uh, during Woodstock in 1969. But but Ozzy is someone that he started the era and now he's ending the era, and sooner or later, all my rock star heroes will pass away. I mean, Bob Seger someday will. God bless, he's still alive. He just had his birthday. Uh, Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, he can't say no more. He tries, but he can't do it no more. And I think he's just as old as Ozzy is. But But someday Metallica with James Hetfield, he's not gonna be able to do it. Axl Rose, one my favorite band of all time, he can hardly hit those high notes anymore. Uh, he can hit the low notes for certain songs, but other songs that he needs a higher note for Rocket Queen and November Rain, he just can't hit those notes. So I wish I was able to watch that. I think that anyone that um, is looking for music to listen to for the first time, go find an Ozzy Osbourne album. Uh, Again, you're gonna have two different eras. You're gonna have the Bark on the Moon era is one of his first few records, and then of course, uh, Scream came out uh, about in 2017, something like that. But my favorite album is No More Tears, Ozzy Osbourne. So cheers to Ozzy. God bless you, Ozzy. Thank you for all the memories that you put out there for us. Peace, love, and heavy metal. Yeah. Like I did to James Hetfield. I'm out. Oh, by the way, follow, subscribe, YouTube. Uh, I'm also on Patreon. I'm also everywhere that you can find me. This will air on probably Wednesday. I'm not going to do it um, for Tuesday. I got to get back on my schedule. But peace, love, I'm out.